If you own property that you're planning to lease out or rent, or you are currently renting, you may already know this, but you are creating a more stressful life for yourself by trying to do it yourself. This is the Cuddler Chronicles, Pain-Free Living Beyond the Body, and there are a lot of areas of life that can be a pain in the... With that in mind, I have Tyler Rackley with me from Brick Road Rentals. Welcome, Tyler.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So I'm laughing just because, I talk about pain-free living beyond the body, but you're actually helping people live longer, less stressful lives. So that does help the body as well, right?
So I think so.
Yeah. Tell me how a property manager does that.
Well, leasing your property out for rent is an extremely stressful process. From the beginning, finding the right tenant to move into your property, to having them eventually leave and either selling the home or putting yourself back in it by moving back in, right?
Okay.
And so, there are two things that can happen during that process. Either you can be stressed out the entire time, worried about how a tenant is taking care of your property. You're going to hire somebody like me who can help you avoid that stress, keep an eye on the property, talk with the tenant if there might be issues at the home, and, really help you live longer as a result, I think. Because as we all know, stress does cause pain, and pain cause a deterioration of either the quality of your life or the length of your life.
It'll age you.
Yes.
It'll age you.
Yep.
So really, you're kind of a let the owners set it and forget it type?
Well, we sort of offer two different ways of dealing with stuff. You can be as active as you'd like to be in the process. You can decide that you want to have regular updates on your home. And then we have some that choose not to do that they choose to sort of set and forget it, as you said. Although we do keep in touch, even if they say set and forget it, to make sure that they know what's going on with their home. I mean, a home, a property is your most valuable asset, usually, and we want to make sure that it stays that way and doesn't depreciate. Right? Okay. We want appreciating assets when we buy a home. And so it's important to me to make sure that you know how things are being taken care of.
Okay. So that's anywhere from like lease management, finding renters, doing background checks.
Yes.
What am I missing?
Yeah, no. So it's a great question, and I'll try to summarize it in sort of capsule form.
Okay.
There's two processes in getting your home ready to rent out.
Okay.
The first is the leasing process. That's advertising your property for sale or for rent. That's making sure that you screen the tenant, signing a lease, and ultimately moving that person in. The second is the property management side of things, which is actually the ongoing management of your property. Inspections of the property, collecting rent, serving any notices to the client, or to the tenant, that you might need. Evicting them, heaven forbid that you have to go through that. But if you do, you want to have somebody who's knowledgeable on that topic and make sure that you do things the right way, serve notices correctly. So, probably one of the things we're going to discuss is that, real estate and property management is sort of like an insurance policy, right? You don't always need somebody there as a property manager, but when you do, you really need them. And
by the time you need it, it's too late to get it.
Exactly. And by the time you may recognize that you need it, it's already too late. So it's a process that begins the first day when I meet with a client, and then ultimately when I give their home back to them, right? Okay. And in between those things is the leasing process, and choosing the right tenant is super important. But then managing that tenant and making sure that your home stays in great shape is super important for you to make sure. And that consistency from the beginning until the end with that tenant is very important. You wouldn't want someone else to screen a client or tenant that's going to move into your property and then hope that they do okay, and you have a second somebody who's taking care of that tenant because they may not have known what was discussed in the beginning stages of the property leasing process. So we offer everything from the beginning to the end.
Okay. And how would you describe what the value of that is? Now, we all know, like, if we have, a fire or, something, falls over because a cat knocks it over and breaks a window or something like that, we know that insurance covers the cost of that. How would you, I guess, articulate the value of a property manager? Because, obviously, that was a long list of stuff that you do.
Correct, yeah.
And you said that was a short overview, so it sounds like a really intense process.
Yeah, it is.
Overall, I know that owning your own business is a lot of work.
Right.
You're doing a bunch of jobs, and I feel like being a property manager is the same thing. And if you're the owner and you decide to be a property manager, you just bought yourself a job, is what
Correct.
it sounds like.
Yep.
Right?
It's sort of like going out and starting a new career in property management, but having no experience whatsoever. And acting as if you might have a lot of experience doesn't get you very far in property management.
Okay.
You know, you have a lot of questions about what you're doing. You may make contract mistakes. You may sign a lease with someone and not realize, oh, I forgot about X, Y, and Z, these items that I should have thought about when I was leasing my property. Well, once you sign that contract with the tenant, it's a done deal. You can't argue with the fact that you forgot something.
Right.
So if I had to say the absolute number one thing that you get with a property management manager is experience, right? Someone who's gone through those things, been trained properly, knows exactly what they're doing, right? You wouldn't go to a general specialist for a medical procedure that requires surgery because they're not familiar with how to do surgery. Just like you might be a very intelligent person at your job as an engineer, does not mean that you will be intelligent enough to do a property management job. These are two different fields, right? So I hope that helps.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's exactly what I tell people. You know, I work with a lot of primary care physicians and orthopedic surgeons, and I don't want to do either of those jobs. I'm like, I'm a muscle and joint pain specialist. Don't ask me about your liver. I don't know. I know enough because I remember my classes, but I have been a doctor for over 10 years.
Yes.
And it was years before that the last time I took internal medicine stuff because it's not the focus of what I do.
Exactly.
You know, you do that for boards, and it's like,
that's right.
I'm going to send you to somebody that knows this. So,
well, more importantly than that is the fact that if you're away from your own job doing something that you don't really understand, you're naturally going to take more effort and more energy and more time to do something that would probably be better served by putting that energy and that effort and that time into the job that you are very good at, right? I mean, you wouldn't want to spend 10 hours of your week doing something that takes you away from working on clients, right? And so if you're spending 10 hours a week doing that, you're actually losing money. And so the value proposition is very, very easy to understand. You get the experience that you need, and you get less stress in your life, and you're not doing things that really you don't know how to manage to begin with. It takes away from your time with your family. It takes away from time from your business. And really, what's the value of that, right? Everybody has their own value. We have clients that are very accomplished doctors, are engineers. You know, they say to themselves, it's not worth it to me to save $100 a month. Why would I want to do that? You know, and so they tell me to take care of their property. I give them the expertise that I think that I have and know that I have, and they get their time back. Right. And less stress.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Because if you can give yourself to your family or to the things that you want to do or the things that you're actually good at, then life is just better.
Life is just better.
Life is just better. I get it. So I guess the life is just better piece, there's two ways. People talk about the carrot and the stick, right?
Yes,
Pain and pleasure.
Yes.
In your opinion, why do people, I guess, you know, run away from pain and run towards pleasure?
Sure.
And why do you think that happens?
Yeah, so, you know, there's obviously a very delicate balance. You know, some people are able to endure a small amount of pain. They feel as though it's not worth it to them, or there's no value in sort of alleviating that pain. And I would say the first thing I'd mention is that everyone goes through seasons of their life, right? Some folks are very aggressive. They want to do everything themselves. It's like the same guy who's going to go change his oil in his own car. You know, he or she understands, hey, I'm going to do this. It's worth it to me. I have a lot of time. I have a lot of energy, and I don't mind the pain of spending an hour doing my own oil change. And then you have folks that say, look, for me to be doing that myself, I don't need to do it myself, spend the money, take the effort, take the energy, be stressed about it all week at work, and I got to go do these things on my own. And they say, I want to eliminate that, right? I want to get away from that. Well, we as human beings, our natural tendency is to stay away from pain and go towards more pleasure. So the first thing that I'll ask people when I sit with them and do a consult is, why do you want to rent your property? That's the first thing I ask. And if they give me some interesting response that I'm not sure I understand, I do dive into that deeper with them. Okay. You know, is it financials? Is it we don't want to sell the property because it was my grandmother's home and it's sort of something I want to keep a hold of? You know, things like that do happen. And then we dive into, really, why aren't you managing it yourself? And you'd be surprised. It runs the gamut in terms of what someone is saying to me. Well, I live out of state. If there's something that breaks down, I don't want to drive back into town. So generally, people are thinking about what is the pain I might endure during this process? And do I really want to sustain that at any point, or do I want to just hand it over to someone else to handle? And as being someone who does this job about 60 hours a week and having staff and everything else, we're much more accustomed to dealing with those issues than someone who's out of state, for instance.
Did you say 60, like 60?
Yeah, usually at least.
God bless you. God bless you.
I love my job, so that's what I do.
I'm so glad.
Yeah.
That is a lot of time. So that, I guess, is the pain. Like they don't want to drive back into town. They don't want to do the repairs. They don't want to have to find a contractor.
For sure.
And I'm sure that's one of the biggest things that I can think of is that, if you don't know a guy, then you want to know somebody who knows a guy.
Sure.
And if you have experience with people in the trades, then you can weed through.
And just on that note, and that if you ever needed somebody, you're happy to call me, and I'll give you that referral to that person. It's not an issue for me, and that goes to your listeners too, is that I'm not here to prevent you from having that information, right? Because if you called me and said, hey, I do kind of need a guy, who do you know? I want to manage this process. Well, handing you a number and handing you a name of someone I trust is beneficial to the contractor, but it's also beneficial to you. At some point in your life, you're going to say, I don't want to pick up the phone. I don't want to meet that contractor there. I don't want to negotiate a price with that contractor. I don't want to do that. The heavy lifting is deciding how the resolution is going to be to a problem you might have, not who to call, right? But ultimately, we do form these bonds with the contractors, as an example, to make sure that this process goes as smoothly as possible. And that's also a financial benefit to you too. I mean, if you call someone from Google, if you were to look up a roofer and call Google, you might not get a good price. Whereas I call someone 3 or 4 times a month, they're more likely to want to keep my business, make sure their pricing is right, make sure the job is done correctly and quickly, right? Because I am the guy who's doing it in bulk versus the one-offs that call. So while you might be spending money to hire me, you're also saving money by making sure you use
kind of like a Costco membership.
Exactly. Yeah, you get a membership to my network, and you get a membership to the fact that if you have a problem or even want some information, you call me. Another example of that is you might at the end of the year, as we're coming into the beginning of the new year now, you'll need to know how much money you made on the property. Some folks don't really clearly understand how much money they've made, so you get the accounting information that you might need to file your taxes, as well as how to write off any of the expenses that may have occurred over the last year. A lot of people will go and make a $180 repair, $200 repair to their home, never keep a receipt. We do all of that. We keep all the receipts so that you can give it to your accountant. And we all know taxes equal stress, right? And so all of us are thinking to ourselves, either March 15th or April 15th, I got to deal with this, and I've got this situation, and boy, it pays to have somebody who's already done all that for you and prepared it for you, given it to you, so you just pass it off to your accountant.
Wow.
Yeah. Takes a lot of stress away, especially if you own 5 or 6 homes and you're not really sure, and some of our clients do, where they're not really sure where some of their money went, and making sure that they capture all of that for tax write-off purposes.
It's good stuff.
Yeah.
Tell people how they can get in touch with you, Tyler.
Sure, yeah. Well, again, my name is Tyler Rackley. I'm with Brick Road Rentals. We're a property management firm here in Richmond, Virginia. And we do property management in about a 30-minute radius of the center of Richmond. You can call me at 804-545-4457 or write me, Tyler, at brickroadrentals.com. Mention that you came from here because I want to be able to give credit where credit's due.
Okay, yep. Cool. All right, so something that I love doing at the end here, I don't know if you've watched a whole lot of podcasts or anything like that, but I have seen there, but I also saw in a old show, called Inside the Actor's Studio.
Oh, of course,
Have you seen it?
Yeah,
okay,
of course.
So, at the end, he would always have this questionnaire that he would ask everybody the same questions. Right?
Yes, yeah.
So I have one.
Do you have your note cards, too, that you can
No, I don't.
flip through?
I don't. I have a clipboard.
Yeah, it's okay.
I have my clipboard here with the questions. Even though I've done it so many times now, I should know them by heart.
Yes. I'm glad this isn't like Between Two Ferns, though. You've seen that one.
I have seen clips of it.
Oh, okay,
people send me clips every now and then.
Yeah, well, check that one out, too, because the questions aren't as nice as I think your questions are going to be.
Yeah, probably different.
You're probably not going to insult me when you ask questions.
No, that's not the plan anyway.
Maybe.
You never know. But, so I've gotten the nickname the painkiller, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Get 88% of my patients out of pain in 3 visits with my advanced pain protocol.
Yep.
So the painkiller closer starts with the first question. What is the best piece of advice that you've either given or received or heard given in your industry?
That's a great question. So the first one is show people with your actions, not your words. I mean, I think, as we're working, it's easy to get caught up in giving a lot of lip service, right? And telling people of all the wonderful things you're going to do, and then they just sort of never happen. And so the best advice I was ever given was show them with your actions, not your words. And you can also show them with your words, but people believe you a lot more when you actually do what you say you're going to do. Yep. Biggest advice I would give to someone is just answer your phone. I mean, it's related to the actions thing. I don't just receive voicemails and email people back or text them. I actually answer my phone. If you need something, especially if you're a current client, and I see your name pop up on my phone, I'm answering the call. It doesn't matter if it's 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock at night. I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to do what I need to do because you really do acknowledge that I care about you and care about your property or care about the tenants and the experience they're going through. And so it's the biggest piece of advice I would give to anyone in any industry is that the feeling you receive as a consumer when you have somebody actually answer the phone is so much deeper than someone who always sends you to voicemail, right? So feel free to answer that phone. And I know in the digital age now we get a lot of spam calls, and you have to deal with that, right? You have to know to add certain people to your phone book and make sure that you answer calls and ignore other calls and that sort of thing. So
right.
Yeah.
Right. I tell people to text me because I work by myself.
Oh, of course, yeah.
So it's like, I'm not answering the phone call while we're doing this. I'm using my phone to record.
Right? Right. And in addition to that, most people prefer to text now. They don't, and don't make the cardinal sin of calling someone after they've texted you, right? So make sure that if they text you, you reciprocate with a text. You don't say, I'm going to pick up the phone, because oftentimes that's sort of an indication that they can't talk to you, right? And so you'll actually become a stressor instead of a stress reliever.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Right. Absolutely. And it's, and also it's like you want to give somebody personal attention. Like you said, if they text you, text back. Right?
That's right. Yep.
I get it. What is the worst piece of advice that you've given or received or heard?
Well, I don't know what the worst piece of advice I've given, although I'm sure I've given some bad advice like anyone else. But I'd say the worst piece of advice I've ever heard said, and this is probably throughout real estate, it's not particular to my industry, but is spend money to make money. And the reality is that, yes, you do have to spend money to make money. You have to market yourself. You have to market your company. You have to do the things that are important. You have to take care of your clients. Sometimes I'll spend money to just keep my client happy or to keep a tenant happy of my own money. But the reality is that you don't get anywhere by just spending money. There has to be a purpose. There has to be a reason why you're spending the money that you are. It's an investment, just like anything else. If I spend $300 to help in a situation that may not be my fault, or maybe it is, there's got to be a reason for it, right? My client will be happier, the tenant will be happier, my business will grow. It can't be something that I just spend. And I see that done all the time. I hear that phrase used and overused a million times because people think that, well, if I just spend money on stuff, money's going to come back to me. No, that's not true. In fact, I'd say the better way to approach it is to say, if I care about you and I take care of you and I'm worried about your needs and your wants, then the money's going to come to me. It's going to be a guarantee. It's going to come to me. They're going to care about the fact that I need help, that I need things, but don't start off thinking about yourself, start about thinking with others, right?
Gotcha.
Yeah. Zig Ziglar said, if you care about enough people, the money will come, right? And so I truly believe that that's sort of the right strategy, right?
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. A giver's gain.
Yeah, exactly.
You reap what you sow.
Exactly. Yep.
All of that.
Yep. And we'll all make mistakes. I mean, along the same line as, everybody makes mistakes and failures, and failing forward is totally acceptable in anything you do, right? And I've certainly, over the last decade of being in this business, I've made mistakes. I'm lucky that I had great clients that if I made a mistake, they said no big deal, right?
Right.
If I'm in a situation where it's all about me all the time and it's just a transaction, when you make a mistake, they aren't forgiving, right? And so things do happen. And don't act like you're too proud of that either. Don't act like you're too proud to not admit when you've made a mistake. Yeah. I'd say that's another thing that, as a business owner, but also as a property manager, if someone screws up, remember your staff screws up, just be humble enough to say, I messed up. This is what happened. Right. And people will, even tenants who might be in a situation where they know and they can take advantage of your mistake. I mean, things happen. You can't respond quickly to a work order. You can't deal with an issue that they might have, right? And, you just say, I'm sorry, it was last night, I was with family, et cetera, et cetera. Things like that are totally reasonable to suggest to people. But to act like as if it didn't happen,
right?
Not reasonable. Shouldn't be like that. Don't be proud. Don't be boastful. Be humble.
Okay.
Yep.
I like it.
Yep.
So the next question is starting to get a little bit deeper, more into you, less work, more you.
Yeah.
How would you describe your purpose in life?
Oh, that's a really great question. The first is, I think my purpose in life is to be a provider for my family. That's really something that's very passionate to me. The second thing is to live my life with a servant's heart. I mean, if there are things that need to be done, I'm the guy to do it. I don't. Nothing is below me. I don't feel as if. I'll give you an example. Not to make it work related, but sort of along the same lines. Since work is pretty much my life. I mean, the reality is I work so much and I enjoy what I do. And so every once in a while you'll have a complaint. There's an issue with trash. A tenant isn't collecting their trash or isn't throwing it in the can or whatever. And we have this property downtown that notoriously gets trash dumped in the cans that, someone will pull in the alleyway and they'll dump their own trash in the can of a tenant. And, who else will do it? You know what I mean? It's sort of my philosophy. So I go over there, I grab our work truck, I throw all the trash in the back of the work truck, and I go to the dump, and I don't do that because I'm thinking about how to use that on a podcast one day. I do that because, my staff...
Bonus.
My staff is busy doing what they do, right? And I've got an opportunity to go do it. And I think if you look at things that way and you say to yourself, how do I have a servant's heart? How do I do these things that might need to be done that maybe no one wants to do? And so my purpose in life is to provide for my family and to do the things that need to be done, regardless of whether they're, low-level things or high-level things. That's how I am. Always been and always will be. And as a result, when people see that, especially like my employees, they realize that I'm just like them, I'm just another guy trying to make a living, trying to do what I do.
Right.
And I think my clients appreciate that too, knowing that, and I've been that way since I was selling real estate. If you, crawl space inspections, I'm down there. I'm in my coveralls. I'm going through the crawl space. I'm not sitting out in my car on my cell phone. I really want to get involved and know the properties. So when I manage a property for someone, you can be assured I know every detail about that property, not just the good, but also the bad and the things you might want to have me fix. All right.
I like it.
Yeah.
This one kind of rolls into that, I think.
Okay.
What is something that other people value that you don't value?
That is a great question. So I'd say in today's age, there's some difficulty with the way people approach how to market themselves. And something that I just don't subscribe to, and I don't spend even a lot of time on, is social media. I mean, if someone is looking for a property manager, they're going to find me, right? And I'm going to market to them. I want to market, but being an influencer or posting a bunch of stuff on Instagram, it's never been my forte, one. And two, it's never been an indicator of success, right? I mean, sure, you might go on and you say, who are your recommendations for plumbing, right? And you might have 5 different people give 5 radically different answers with 5 different contractors about who you should call and why you should call them, et cetera, et cetera. But you probably wouldn't go on and say, hey, I have a life-threatening emergency. I need your recommendations for how to get immediate surgery, right? And you're not going on Facebook, you're not going on Instagram, and you might not even remember those things ever being discussed on Facebook or Instagram, Pinterest, wherever else you're getting your information from, because you're going to look for the best resource. You're not going to look for the one you've been marketed to 100 times or 150 times. You're going to be skeptical of the fact that you keep seeing their name. It's like hearing a name on the radio over and over again. It does make you think of them first, but not necessarily capture their business, right? Because you might call them and say, this is an operation, maybe that all they do is market, right? I don't market very much on social media because I believe my actions speak much, much louder than my words. And so I get most of my business by referral. So I don't really follow that sort of 21st century social media is everything. And I think there are a lot of people who spend a lot of money on social media that, quite frankly, they don't reap any benefit from. And so for me, that's just something I don't do.
Okay.
I know I'm not in the vast majority here. I'm in the very, very small minority that do that. But that's just how I've always operated. And it seems to have done okay so far.
Referrals are always the best.
100%.
Yeah, they're always the best.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. And earning a testimonial that's a legitimate testimonial and not paying for a testimonial means more to me. Might not mean more to the thousands of people who view it and see all these paid for testimonials, but for me it means something that someone voluntarily went on and wrote a review for me.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
The thought of paying for a review is, I don't know, to me it's repugnant.
Yeah.
But I'm sure people do it.
Everybody knows the value of reviews now, and I think that just like anything else, the more they're influenced by money getting involved or to change things, and there's systems. Just speaking about reviews, and you can feel free to cut this out of your podcast. But speaking of reviews, if there's systems that you ever see in the tagline of an email that says, "How was your service today? 1 through 5." You should just know 1 through 4 are completely ignored. They're not reviewed. They do not care about what your opinion is if you're 4 or below. If you click 5, what they do is ask you for your opinion and then immediately publish that on social media sites. So the reality is that they're not really giving you full example of what their business is like or even their experiences are like, because they're filtering those before you decide to go to Google. You feel like, oh, I clicked this thing in the email that said you didn't do a good job. Oh, that'll make its way to some source that will then fix this issue. It doesn't. It doesn't at all. And it also discourages you from then going on again and writing a review on Google. You think you've already done your part.
Okay. So this is actually, people tend to respond to this one as if it was the hardest question, but I love it. I love this question. It is, if you could create one law that everyone had to follow, what would it be?
That everyone had to follow?
Well, there is no breaking this law.
Yeah, it's, I mean, I don't want to go with a safe answer, but I feel like it's hard to know. I guess in some ways, there'd be a fun law that everyone had to treat each other with respect. Whatever. You could say something like that,
you have to define what respect is.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds so PC, right? I think the one law I'd love to see as being someone who deals with real estate so often is I'd really love to see people be able to do more with their personal property, right? With their property that they own. And whether that's forced upon them or not, or just available to them, I'd like to see them be able to rent their home more often. That being said, there's guidelines for how you do things, right? And there's homeowners associations, and there's things that they're put in place to avoid the people who will stretch things to the extreme.
Yes.
And, having taken my fair amount of emails and phone calls and text messages over my career in real estate, I've seen some really wild things done. And I've seen some people that really want to stretch the limits, not have a farm property, but essentially keep farm cattle on your property. Things that are strange, right? That you would say, I wouldn't want to be that next door neighbor. I wouldn't want to be the guy who lives down the street who has to deal with the semi-trucks coming through the neighborhood at all times and all hours because the guy's running his major business at the end of my street, right? So there's rules that are put into place. But I do think that if there was a law that everyone had to follow, was sort of to be, I guess, more understanding about that the real estate and your property is something to be used as not only a tool, but an investment to you as well.
I like it.
Yeah.
I was, immediately when you started answering that, I was like, I hope he gives examples, because all I'm thinking about is my HOA right now.
Well, and HOAs are important, but again, HOAs are there to protect and guard you. If something is happening in your neighborhood that shouldn't be the intention, and I know I'm talking a lot about my career, but because I'm passionate about it, I think about this stuff all the time. So one of the things that's really applicable right now in the last, really the last 10 years, but it's come front and center really over the last 18 months or so, is Airbnbs. And the limit of how many Airbnbs there may be able to be in a city, the amount of usage as an Airbnb. When I say Airbnb, that's a short-term rental. That means having someone come into your property less than 30 days consecutively and stay in your home, right? And as being in rentals and real estate, they get calls and interested people who want to rent their property. They want to rent it days at a time, not years or months at a time, but days at a time, right? And of course, that's not always allowed. It's not always allowed. And it's not allowed for the reasons that people don't want their neighborhood to become a hotel, right? They don't, it can be taken advantage of. Perfectly acceptable if, hey, Joe, you're going out of town for a month and a half. You don't want to have your house sitting empty. You decide you want people to come and stay there. Makes a little income for you. Accommodates somebody who wants to be in Richmond in this area. And it's sort of a win-win for you. It's a different thing when 6 or 7 or 8 or 10 investors come into your neighborhood, buy all the properties, realize there's a financial incentive to do this on a daily basis, not a monthly or yearly basis, and then half your neighborhood is visitors that are there short term. There's no skin in the game, right? Okay. Some people will do a great job. There are people out there that will run Airbnbs, short-term rentals, to make sure that they protect the neighborhood, right? And that it's an enhancement to the neighborhood that there's an Airbnb nearby. There are some others out there that live in different states. They don't care. They don't want to care. All they think about every day when they wake up is how much money they can make out of this situation. Not that Dr. Joe down the street sees people with luggage go in every single day, right? And that the party that they're throwing on New Year's Eve is disturbing the whole neighborhood. They don't care about that. They're thinking about the dollars, right? And so I'd love to see people be able to use their property, but at the same time, I also think that there need to be some structure to make sure. Yep.
Okay.
But I'd like to err on the side of allowing people to use their property more the way that they would like to use it.
I get it.
Yep.
I get it. No, and that's honestly, you were almost apologetic about bringing it back to your business, but again, this is you have a perspective that I don't have. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's stuff that people need to hear. People, I'm sure, would like to hear, and it helps us to get to know you better. So
I might bore a few people. That's okay. They'll probably turn the podcast off.
If they've gotten to this point in this, they're invested.
They figured out this is how it's going to be for a while.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Okay, so pick a media, a book, a podcast, a movie, TV show, something that you're passionate about.
Okay.
Give me an example and why.
Okay, so I love this question because it does give me an opportunity to talk about some of my personal life.
Okay.
Not real estate related. So as you know, but as your listener will soon know, is that I love to travel. So although I work a lot, I travel all over the world. Any opportunity I can. If there's a great sale on a flight to Australia, if there's a great sail to Europe, if there's something happening in the Caribbean or a cruise that I want to go on, I take advantage of that. I work hard so that I can play hard. And one of the podcasts that I love the most, that I listen to, actually subscribe to it, pay money to get special editions of it, is the Bangkok podcast in Bangkok, Thailand. So I have traveled to Thailand about 10 times over the last decade. My wife and I go. Sometimes she goes to the Philippines. Sometimes I'll stay for a couple weeks. Sometimes she goes to Thailand, meets friends there. It's just a super convenient place for us to go. It doesn't cost much when you're there. It doesn't cost much to go there. So we really, really love going. And the podcast essentially educates me on what I want to do in the next time I go there. So so that's one thing that I really, 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 really love. Another thing that I really love in terms of books, I love any self-help or improvement books. I read things on how to fix my own home. I read things on how to fix other people's homes if they have issues, just so I can understand it better throughout the process of being a property manager. Movies. I like movies that make me feel good.
Okay.
I mean, anything that makes me feel good, generally I'll watch. Don't watch horror or anything like that. I would tell you my favorite movie, but then you'd be able to get my password on like half of my accounts. So I won't tell you the make of my first car.
Okay.
I'm not going to tell you where my mother was born, and I'm not going to tell you what movie is my favorite.
We have a mutual business associate who's an IT professional, and he posted something on social media sometimes that, like, you know, we think that it's this hacker in a dark room, like, figuring out your password. But it's really, you know, people take these quizzes like, where was your mom born?
Right,
and,
exactly.
Know, and that's where they get those answers.
Yes.
So
I can determine the day you'll die by you giving me the information, including the last 4 digits of your social security number.
Right.
Figure that one out real quick.
Right. Oh, my goodness. All right. So we're almost done. Last question.
No problem.
Right. When you're done,
Okay.
in this life, in business, how do you want to be remembered?
It's a difficult question because, you know, mortality and knowing that you're going to die changes what you'll do in the future with the remaining years that you have. And of course, as you're young, you don't think about that. And as you're older, you try to make up for things that maybe you should have done differently. But I would say when I pass away, I want people to remember me as being a guy they respected and trusted and knew that they could come to if they ever had any problems, right? I never want to be unapproachable. I never want to be somebody who you feel was not willing to pick up whatever you needed done and just take over, right? And when I pass away, I would love people to be sitting around talking about that I was a funny guy, that I made them laugh, that I made them smile, that if they ever had a need, I was there for them. I don't want people to say this guy always ran away. He was a fair weather friend. You know, I don't want them to think that. You know, I care a lot about my friends and love my family. So I don't ever want to be that guy that may not have shown that when he was alive, right? And so I think my goal between now and when I do pass away is to show those people that I love them. And after I pass away, I hope that they'll remember that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sounds good.
Yep.
Sounds good. All right. Well, Tyler, I appreciate you coming on the show. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Again, the Cuddler Chronicles, Pain-Free Living Beyond the Body. Tyler Rackley, tell them how they can get in touch with you again.
Okay. This again.
Just phone number.
Tyler Rackley, 804-545-4457, and Tyler at brickroadrentals.com.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.